What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is what if there was a nuclear war between the US and Russia. Now, this video was done 2 years ago, so it won't imply anything which is happening right now, which we do just want to say a few little things on it. Obviously, we don't really get into politics on this channel, but it's obviously disastrous what's happening right now, isn't it? And our hearts go out to anyone affected, and hopefully you legends are all safe and sound, because it's absolutely horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
We understand most people don't want it to happen, so yeah, we just wanted to say our hearts go out to all of you. We'll put a link if there is any donation things to maybe the Ukraine refugees or something like that in the description of this video if you want to go and support it. If we can find one, we'll support it as well, so that link will be in the description if we do find one. But I feel like around at least my office and your family, the nuclear word has kind of been around, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's come up a bit.
Definitely, and I guess this is just going to educate us on what would actually happen if there's a nuclear war. I do want to caveat it, and from what I understand, it is highly unlikely. So I'm pretty sure it's highly unlikely. But I think this is just going to educate us. And again, this is 2 years old, so this isn't going to include any bias for one side, like within the Ukraine and stuff like that, issues at the moment, and the Russian issues. So it's not going to have that bias. So I think it's going to be a very interesting one from not knowing anything that's happening now. If it was just nuclear, what would actually happen? Yeah. So, and again, I think it's highly unlikely. Smash that like button if you enjoy this content. Smash the subscribe button. And yeah, like I said, our hearts go out to everyone. And let's see what would actually happen if, in worst case scenario, I guess, like worst case, what would happen if a war broke out between the US and Russia and nuclear was involved. Let's get straight into it.
The date is March 4th, 2022, and after years of deliberation, both Georgia and Bosnia...
It's March 1st today, that is weird.
Okay, but this is a bit weird, the fact that this was 2 years ago. March 4th, 2022, and everything that's going on.
Sorry, this was 3 years, this was 2019. I don't even know why I said, yeah, this was 2019. I got my date on there, this was 3 years ago.
That's a bit creepy.
That is very creepy.
Especially with everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, and we're in March.
Are you sure this is not recent? Well, it can't be because it's the 1st of March anyway, so it can't be a...
Yeah, this is 2019.
Okay. Right,
oh my days, what?
Okay,
and Herzegovina have officially been accepted as full NATO partners. Ukraine now reinvigorates its push for NATO membership, while Russia has for the last 6 months warned of military action. Alarmed by what it views as encroachment of NATO on its borders, Russia at last responds to the ascension of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Georgia by massing forces on its western border. Russia is gambling...
Okay.
Is the whole Ukraine-Russia thing then like a planned thing? Do they plan this?
Well, there's obviously been tensions for a while and misunderstood.
Maybe this is what it... Okay.
There has always been tensions. And
okay, it's just weird how creepy he got the timeline.
Yeah, as if like March he got March 2022. Like that is extremely creepy. Obviously the Bosnia and Herzegovina stuff aren't really involved in this, so that's off. But it's close enough to be like, what the hell? From 3 years ago. Oh my days. I did not expect that. Yeah, let's carry on and see what would happen.
And that the other NATO nations will reconsider admitting the 2 new members, or at least not be willing to go to war over the defense of brand new members to the alliance. Russia, however, has completely underestimated the solidarity of the alliance, realizing that NATO is in essence a worthless entity unless Article 5 of the treaty is immediately enforced. NATO warns Russia that an attack on one ally is considered an attack on all allies. To reinforce the point, NATO troops are sent into Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the alliance's most vulnerable members given their direct proximity to Russia. Russia, however, sees this as an unacceptable show of force, and the move proves to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Without warning, Russian armor pours into Latvia and Lithuania, linking up with forces in Kaliningrad. World War III has officially begun. For the first month of fighting, Russian forces push as far west as Poland, but the offensive grinds to a halt as NATO members finish mobilizing and their resistance solidifies. With American troops and equipment making landfall in France and Germany, NATO is now launching vicious counterattacks against Russia's forces in Poland. In the Pacific, the American Navy steams towards Russia's eastern coast, bringing with it a Marine Expeditionary Force meant to open a second front in the war and split Russia's forces. Russia is faced with a losing proposition and decides to gamble. It authorizes a single nuclear strike against Berlin, betting that while European NATO members may retaliate with their limited nuclear arsenals, the Americans won't risk the destruction of their cities to support their European allies. The date is now April 12th, 0205 hours Zulu. American and Chinese infrared recon satellites both pick up the telltale fiery plume of an ICBM launch from a missile farm in the south of Russia. 2 minutes later, the American president is awoken from his sleep and given the news. Russia has launched a single nuclear device, unknown payload, likely target in Western Europe. The U.S. Air Force's Global Strike Command has for weeks been flying nuclear alert missions with its fleet of B-52 bombers, maintaining a nuclear-armed force in the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as its predecessor, the Strategic Air Command, once did for decades during the Cold War. With the detected launch of a Russian nuclear weapon, a priority flash is immediately dispatched to the airborne forces and alert forces on the ground. Flight crews stationed overseas in Japan, on the west coast of the United States, and in Europe all review their single integrated operational plan, which lays out the exact flight route, refueling track, and targets for each of the bomber crews. Most aircraft have 2 primary targets, with 2 alternate targets to be struck should they be unable to make it to their primary targets. Within minutes, the crews are in the air, and those already on alert patrols immediately set their course for the positive control turnaround point, a pre-planned point near Russia where the air crews will automatically turn around unless they receive an order to strike. At missile sites across the American Midwest, the giant concrete shutters that protect the buried missiles inside their launch facilities are automatically rolled back, and the security forces personnel tasked with defending those sites go on full alert. Their orders are to defend the silos until every missile has been launched, after which they are to escort surviving missile crews out and back to a rendezvous point well away from
like mini nukes, but don't do as much damage.
I think missiles
they still
can
do
be
damage, can't they?
Yeah, and I think they can, like a nuke. I don't really know the definition to it. Maybe a nuke could be a missile as well, but it's just a nuclear missile.
Right, okay.
I think a missile, because
at the moment there's like missiles going off, but there's no nukes going off.
No, like they're just normal ones. Because
Right.
the way I kind of describe it during the soccer, they say missiles are being thrown from the stands because it's a flying object, pretty much thrown with force, kind
Right,
of.
okay.
So I guess a nuke is a missile.
Yeah, because flying, yeah.
Please let us know. Again, we're not the most
Right.
educated on this, are we?
No.
So we're doing this to educate ourselves and stuff like that. But I mean, now we've paused it. How scary would that be? I mean, obviously it's awful at the moment what's going on, but how scary for the whole world as well would it be for that first nuke to be sent? Because then you kind of think, is this the end? You know what I mean?
Yeah, when's it our turn? When's it happening to us?
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah,
Very, very scary. If you're willing to send off one, how many are you willing to send?
Well, that's it, isn't it? If you're willing to do it in the first place, then you're willing to do it until
Take
you
the
win,
risk
aren't you?
of
Really,
having some back, and it's that is very
a
scary.
missile farm. For these sites will be a priority target for incoming Russian missiles. Inside underground bunkers, missile operators rehearse launch procedures, each man responsible for a group of missiles. The entire system only requires 2 out of 4 of the operators to authenticate a launch order, just in case 2 of the men get cold feet about launching a nuclear Armageddon and refuse their orders. Deep in the Arctic, Pacific, and Atlantic Ocean, the U.S.'s extremely low-frequency communication system flashes a nuclear alert to America's ballistic missile submarine fleet. Each sub carries 24 Trident missiles, and each missile carries up to 8 independently targetable warheads with a yield of 475 kilotons. America's fleet of hunter-killer attack submarines have for weeks been stalking and eliminating Russia's aging ballistic missile submarines, and the survivors are bottled up near the Russian shore where they can be protected with shore-based firepower and anti-submarine patrols. Now, America's attack submarines set course for Russia's coast, and their mission is to eliminate Russia's surviving nuke boats, though it will cost America's submarine fleet dearly, as Russia's Air Force and Surface Navy fiercely defend their surviving ballistic missile subs. At 0209 hours, the American president is told that the American recon assets have positive confirmation of a nuclear detonation in Berlin. The Russians have fired an older single-warhead ICBM, yet with a yield large enough to completely destroy the city of 3.6 million. On a hotline direct with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the president is told that Britain is already issuing a fire order to retaliate for the attack. The president knows that the attack on Berlin was a gamble by the Russians, who don't believe that the US will risk an escalation and attacks on its own cities to defend Europe. An emergency flash is dispatched by the US's ELF communication system to a lurking Ohio-class submarine currently on station deep beneath the ice of the North Pole. After authenticating the order, the sub breaches through the 5-foot thick ice and the door on a single dorsally mounted launch tube props open. The navigation system on the Trident II missile located inside the launch tube is activated, and a mission trajectory is automatically loaded into the flight computer. Then, a steam generator ignites a solid grain rocket motor, which feeds superheated exhaust into a tank of chilled water. The water evaporates and expands, forcing the missile within the launch tube to be launched upwards and out. After which, the first stage motor ignites and the missile screams upward and towards space. An astro-inertial guidance system on board the missile uses star positioning to fine-tune the accuracy of its trajectory, as GPS has long been unreliable due to Russian attacks on NATO satellites. The Russians have bet wrong, and
we've got technology which tracks the stars to find out where it can go. Technology is just different gravy. It's scary, but different gravy.
Minutes later, 8 475 kiloton warheads detonate over the Russian missile facility which launched the Berlin attack. Simultaneously, a British attack strikes the cities of Ekaterinburg and Novosibirsk, with a population of 1.5 million or 3 million together. NATO has responded in kind to the Berlin attack, and America has both punished Russia's nuclear forces for the attack and shown that it will stand with its allies. In the halls of the Kremlin, a desperate power struggle plays out. 3 million Russians lie dead, and the US has obliterated one of Russia's major nuclear missile facilities, destroying dozens of ICBMs in place. Russian ballistic submarines, considered to be the most survivable element of the nuclear triad, have also been decimated by American attack submarines, though the US has lost 12 subs of its own in its quest to eliminate the remaining Russian boats. Military leadership clashes with the civilian leadership and demands a retaliatory attack on American missile facilities. With US reinforcements in force on the Western Front and Russians starting to lose ground in Poland, battlefield commanders have for the last week been requesting a release on strategic nuclear weapons to use against American infantry and tanks. The fierce debate on the use of tactical weapons is reignited, and when further nuclear attacks are denied, Russian military leadership stages a stunning coup. The Russian president is removed from power, and Russian commanders receive authorization for the use of a dozen tactical weapons against NATO forces in Europe. Within a half hour, NATO troop concentrations in Poland are hammered by low-yield nuclear attacks, killing tens of thousands. American reinforcements fresh from the States and currently massing around the Ramstein military facilities in Germany are hit with 3 tactical devices. The Marine Expeditionary Force in the Pacific, staging out of Japan, is also struck by a single device, as are the 2 naval carrier battle groups supporting the invasion. By 9 a.m., American military forces have suffered more casualties than all wars since World War II combined, and the ability.
Right, that is your problem, is it? Once one's gone, I know this is all just a story being made up and how they think it potentially could play out, but once one's gone and you're talking 3 million people dead.
Yeah.
And that country's like, well, we've got to retaliate, so then we retaliate and suddenly, well, we've suddenly got 3 million dead. Well, now our people, even though technically we did the first blow, our people want us to fight back, send another. And then it's like, how do you stop once that first one's gone? Because
and you're just taking innocent people's lives, aren't you?
Exactly, and starting, I guess, the beginning of the end, which is so scary. But it's not like a little, like one country's giving them a slap on the wrist, you've learnt your lesson, move on. You're talking huge casualties, and it's kind of like, well, we need to defend that then. And at what point do you stop?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the scary thing is that if one country does it, another country is definitely going to do it back. And then that country's going to think, well, they've just done it to us, so let's do it back. And then when does it end? When the world ends?
It's like, I suppose when you were a kid and maybe you slap someone and then they slap you back, you think, well, you slapped me harder than you slapped me, so I get to slap you a bit more. And then, well, no,
I never
now you've slapped me twice, like with your mates on the playground, now you've slapped me twice, I've slapped you once, so then they're slapping me even harder, and you just keep going, you know what I mean? Cause at that point, you're just going back and forth.
Because you think you're defending your country, but you're making it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to get to a stage, like I said at the start, but it is scary that the fact that all this is there and possible, it's a little bit scary.
The ability for NATO to push back Russian forces in Poland is eliminated. While Russia has maintained an inventory of low-yield tactical nuclear weapons to counter America's overwhelming conventional firepower advantage, the United States has not kept an active inventory of tactical devices for decades. This leaves the American president with few options for a comparable retaliatory attack. While the yields on America's airborne submarine and ground-launched nuclear devices can be dialed down, there's no way to broadcast that fact to the Russians, and little chance they'd believe it. An attack with traditional ICBM submarine-launched missiles or airborne nuclear cruise missiles will seem to Russia like a full-blown attack and risk escalating the war into a total nuclear confrontation. Yet the president has little choice. Tens of thousands of American service members are dead. U.S. forces in Europe have been badly damaged by the attacks, and both carrier battle groups supporting the Pacific invasion are reporting major losses of ships, aircraft, and personnel. The Marine Invasion Force in Okinawa is combat ineffective, 4 divisions reporting over 55% casualties each. Resigning himself to a list of terrible options, the president orders a retaliatory attack using ground-based ICBMs. The Air Force's Global Strike Command nuclear bomber fleet is to approach and hold at their failsafe points, ready to proceed to their targets should Russia retaliate again. At Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, a launch order is authorized by the 2-man Minuteman launch crew, and a single Minuteman III missile roars into the night sky. 60 seconds later, the second stage of the missile ignites, separating from the spent first booster stage. Adjustments using the second stage thrust vector control keeps the missile on its course, and another 60 seconds later, the flight computer separates the second stage and fires the engine on the third and final stage. By now, the missile has reached space, and as the third stage engine burns out, reverse thrust separates the 3 warheads and their penetration aids from the launch vehicle. Some of the penetration aids explode, showering space with millions of pieces of reflective aluminum, which wreak havoc on radar used by missile interceptors, while other aids simulate the real warheads and serve as dummy targets for any Russian interceptors. With no real Russian anti-ballistic missile defense programs though, the warheads and the dummies all re-enter the Earth's atmosphere completely unharmed. 23 minutes after launch, 3 separate 475-kiloton nuclear explosions rock Eastern Europe. Russian forces in Poland are obliterated by 2 nuclear strikes many times greater in magnitude than those used against NATO forces, while yet another Russian nuclear missile facility is struck by the 3rd warhead. With American weapons targeting their missile fields and systematically eliminating Russia's ability to respond to nuclear attacks, the final order is given for a full-blown nuclear response. American reconnaissance satellites and electronic eavesdropping assets all pick up the telltale signs of preparatory operations for nuclear launch across Russia's remaining missile farms. The order to attack is mirrored in the U.S., and launch officers in North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana receive the order to launch. Simultaneously, American airborne assets receive an emergency flash, which when authenticated authorizes the air crews to proceed to their targets with full nuclear release. American ballistic missile submarines breach through the thick polar ice or rise to 25 feet below the waves of the Pacific in the North Sea. As Russian missiles clear their silos, it's America's nuclear ballistic missile subs which launch the first wave of retaliatory attacks, almost as fast as Russian ground forces. American submarine-launched missiles target Russia's remaining missile fields in a desperate hope to destroy them before they can finish launch operations. But for the most part, the American strikes fail to stop the launches. Secondary military targets are then struck, with major Russian military bases, supply depots, troop staging areas, and airfields all being obliterated in nuclear fire within 10 minutes of the start of the Russian attack. As Russia's...
You're hearing all these minutes as well. Like, once it's done, it's like, yeah, half an hour later, it's done.
Crazy.
It's so scary as well. And like I said, a list of bad decisions. And it makes you think, like, you got to make sure you have the right person in power, because it's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?
It is scary to think that those people have access to such
destructive things.
Yeah.
ICBMs climb into the atmosphere. A wave of American ballistic missile defense systems immediately spring into action. Having spent billions on ballistic missile defense since the 1980s, all in a bid to make Reagan's Star Wars concept a reality, America now attacks the incoming missiles with a variety of tools. Airborne laser systems in Europe and flying in the Pacific managed to strike at a handful of ICBMs during their vulnerable ascent stage, superheating the missile body from hundreds of miles away with a powerful aircraft-mounted laser system. As the missiles climb into space, ballistic missile defense sites across the west coast of the United States launch their ground-based interceptors. Using a powerful radar, the interceptors scream toward the incoming missiles in a bid to destroy them through kinetic impact before they can re-enter the atmosphere. The Russian missiles, however, immediately disperse their own penetration aids, and a shower of billions of pieces of aluminum chaff wreaks hell on American interceptor radar. The interceptors switch to their visual interception systems, and advanced computer programs frantically scramble to identify the incoming warheads visually, ignoring the clouds of chaff. Half of the interceptors miss their targets. The other half manage to strike, yet of the successful intercepts, a full third are of dummy warheads. To make matters worse, the US only has an inventory of about 60 interceptors ready to fire, and are completely overwhelmed by an incoming horde of hundreds of independently targeted warheads. 24 minutes after launch, the West Coast is the first hit. 1 megaton strikes against Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, and others obliterate the most populated cities on the American West Coast. A follow-on 450 kiloton strike destroys the Los Angeles harbor area, along with tens of thousands of homes and the naval base at San Diego. Edwards Air Force Base in the California desert is struck by 2 450 kiloton strikes, as is Vandenberg Air Force Base. 3 minutes later, nuclear impacts strike the American Midwest. North American Aerospace Defense Command at Petersen Air Force Base is incinerated by a megaton blast, and the Cheyenne Mountain Complex is struck by 2 ground penetration munitions, though the blasts managed to do little damage to the deeply buried facility. Strikes continue to roll eastwards, and a saturation of 300 kiloton strikes decimates the American Farm Belt. These munitions are programmed to be ground bursts, resulting in the scattering of millions of tons of highly radioactive dirt across America's most fertile farmland. Another 3 minutes later, and the East Coast is struck by the Russian ICBMs. Washington is obliterated by 2 separate megaton blasts, as is New York City, the financial heart of America. The American president, however, is safe from the nuclear blasts. He has long ago boarded what is nicknamed the Doomsday Plane, an airborne command post from which he can still manage America's remaining military and civilian forces. With satellite and ground communications completely eradicated, a fleet of Air Force planes now makes up a global command and control system, linking up surviving military forces with the president. Soon, his plane will land at an intact airfield, and he'll be helicoptered out to a surviving supercarrier, from which he will continue to command the survivors of America's military and oversee the reconstruction, if any possible, of what remains of America, all from the safety of the Atlantic Ocean.
I think, yeah, the fact that, if possible, the reconstruction.
Yeah.
Oh, it's mental, isn't it?
That is. I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I do want to reiterate, and I'm sure people in the comments will, it is extremely unlikely because everybody knows this, so it kind of is just...
It's kind of like everyone's a losing game. Yes, no one wins that.
And the way I see it is people only have these as a threat, so people can't do it to other people, if that makes sense, because you know you're going to be wiped out as well.
Yeah, because if they say, oh, I'll do it to you, then you can just be like, well, I'll do it back to you.
If only one person had him, then it's like it's a different story. Like, okay, well, they could just protect themselves.
So we'll do what they want because they can do that to us.
Exactly, but a lot of people have them.
Yeah,
so like I said, I don't think it's going to get to that. But in the case, it's scary, isn't it?
It is scary.
Very scary. It's nice to educate yourself though, and it's nice to have more of an understanding.
I think especially like not even just the things that are going on at the moment, like just in life in general. When if it ever came up again, you know that the chance of it happening is low, even because you know what the media's like about it all.
Well, yeah, the media obviously exaggerates things at times as well.
Gives you a bit more of a down-to-earth kind of understanding of
definitely.
them.
And I guess it kind of... everyone knows if a nuclear war happens, it's going to be disastrous, but you don't know why and stuff like that. But it kind of gives you a little bit of understanding, like, well, I don't think it's going to happen now.
No,
you know what I mean? It adds to that, so maybe it's actually a bit reassuring, like you said. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this if you can. I know it potentially is scary, and we do apologise if that has scared you. But like we said, I think it's good to educate.
Yeah, and I feel better now. Watching that video,
and just more educated and know that. It's one of them.
I'm gonna send it to my sisters.
Definitely, because you always have that chat, don't you? Smash the like button if you have enjoyed this video. Smash that subscribe button as well. Seriously appreciate it. And we'll see you legends in the next one. But hopefully, next one's a taste test, is it? We're about to record that, so a little bit more of an upbeat one.
Christine will be happy.
Yes,
she's been asking.
A few people have been asking. So smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, and we'll see you in a couple hours for hopefully a very nice taste test of some American snacks. Peace.